My name is Melanie. I'm 32 years old. And on the day my heart stopped beating, I was eating roast chicken at a family dinner. What could possibly send my pulse into a tailspin in the middle of mashed potatoes and mom's best Sunday gravy, you ask? The earth shattering announcement my little sister made with a smile on her face and my husband's name on her lips. But let me start with the moment the fork was halfway to my mouth. It was one of those evenings my mother lives for, the proper kind. White tablecloth, real china, the heavy silverware that only comes out for Christmas, Easter, and any occasion she thinks God might be watching more closely. The house smelled like roasted chicken, rosemary, and lemon. A candle with some vaguely biblical name, Bethlehem myrrh or something like that, burned on the sideboard, fighting a losing battle with the scent of garlic. There were 3 framed Bible verses in my line of sight alone. Sometimes I think my parents are afraid that if a wall is left bare, the Holy Spirit might catch a draft. Phones away, please, my mother said as she brought in the last dish. No one's on their phone, Mom, I answered automatically. She gave me a look. You were reaching for your purse, Melanie. I was moving it, I lied. Relax. Logan, sitting beside me, bumped my leg under the table in a gentle, be nice way. I didn't look at him, but I felt the small pinch in my chest ease a little. His presence always did that, like he was a weight, but the good kind, keeping me from floating off into anxiety. Across the table, my father was lining up the glasses like soldiers. Wine for us, water for everyone. Juice ready on standby in case Nicole suddenly decided alcohol hurt the baby Jesus. Is she late? He asked, glancing at the grandfather clock in the corner. Of course she's late, I muttered, too softly for anyone but Logan to hear. He hid a smile behind his hand. Nicole will be here, my mother said firmly as she set down the bowl of mashed potatoes. You know how traffic is on a Friday. She lives 15 minutes away, I said, a little louder this time. Melanie? Mom warned. I shut my mouth. I knew the rules. Questioning Nicole out loud was like questioning God's plan. Technically possible, but there would be a sermon. We sat. My father cleared his throat, that familiar little rumble he always did before saying grace. All right, let's bow our heads. I laced my fingers together and lowered my eyes, trying not to think about how many hundreds of prayers had been said at this table. For health, for wisdom, for Nicole's childhood illness, for money, for guidance. I could probably recite most of them from memory. They all blurred into one long, polite plea. Lord, we thank you for this food, for this home, for family, Dad began. We thank you for bringing us together tonight. We ask for your blessing on our daughters, on their lives, their choices, their futures. I felt my mother's eyes flick toward me even with her head bowed when he said choices. I kept my expression neutral. I didn't need to guess which child's choices worried them more. And we thank you for your miracles, seen and unseen, he finished, voice softening. Miracles. Even now, the word curled around Nicole's name. Amen, my mother breathed. Amen, we all echoed. As if summoned by the final syllable, the front door opened with a gust of cool air and a flurry of movement. Sorry, I'm here. Nicole's voice sang from the hallway. My shoulders tensed. Logan's hand found my knee under the table again. Steady, reassuring. I stared at the salt shaker and inhaled once, slowly. It was just dinner. It was always just dinner until it wasn't. Nicole swept into the dining room, like she was arriving at a photo shoot. Not our parents' house. She wore a soft, cream sweater that somehow managed to hang off one shoulder in that calculated way that said, I woke up like this, and a delicate gold necklace that caught the light every time she moved her head. Her blonde hair was piled into a loose bun, a few pieces framing her face just so. She looked like a lifestyle blogger who'd wandered into a church brochure. Hi, she chirped, leaning down to kiss Mom's cheek. Sorry I'm late, the traffic was insane. See? Mom said, as if Nicole had just proved a theological point. I told you, Melanie, sit down, sweetie, the food is hot. Dad stood long enough to hug her, clapping her shoulder like she'd returned from war, not Whole Foods. Good to see you, kiddo. Nicole's eyes finally landed on me and Logan. Hey, you two. Hi, I said. Hey, Nick. Logan replied politely. She hugged him too, of course, leaning a little too far into his personal space in a way that made my skin prickle. If he noticed, he didn't show it. His posture stayed straight, his hands hovering near her shoulders, careful not to touch more than necessary. He'd learned over the years that reacting only encouraged her. She sat across from us in her usual spot, directly framed by the cross hanging on the wall. A neat little tableau, Nicole and Jesus, center stage. Now that we're all here. Mom's tone was bright, brittle around the edges. Let's eat. The chicken will get cold. Serving dishes started passing around. Chicken, potatoes, green beans, salad. My parents talked about safe things, how the pastor's wife had started a new Bible study, how the neighbor's dog had gotten loose again, how the weather was unusually warm for this time of year, as if it didn't do this every fall now. Nicole laughed at something my father said and touched her hair. Every time she spoke, all three of them leaned in, like planets adjusting their orbit. So, how's work, Melanie? Dad asked eventually, almost as an afterthought. Good, I said. Busy. Busy is a blessing, Mom said automatically. As long as you don't neglect your duties at home. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Pick your battles, Logan had told me more than once. He was right. This wasn't the time. He stepped in smoothly. We've been doing fine. Mel just got put in charge of a new client, actually. It's kind of a big deal. That's nice, Mom said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. And you, Nicole, how's your, what do you call it, consulting? Freelancing, Nicole said, spearing a piece of chicken. It's going great. I might have a lead on a trip to LA soon. A friend of mine knows someone in production. Oh, Hollywood, Dad said, amused and utterly enchanted. That's exciting. I mean, yeah, she said, smiling modestly. We'll see. We'll see. Nicole's life was a series of near misses and almost big breaks, strung together with other people's credit cards and my parents' excuses. Something in my chest pinched again, that familiar mix of resentment and guilt. I took a sip of wine and focused on my plate. The chicken really was good. Crispy skin, juicy meat, little flecks of rosemary clinging to my fork. It was almost funny, in a dark way, that this was what I'd remember as my heart tripped in my chest. The taste of garlic and lemon. It happened in the quiet between topics. The conversation dipped into that small lull where everyone chewed at the same time, silence settling for half a beat. Then Nicole cleared her throat. It wasn't that she did it loudly, it was the way she did it, like she knew exactly how much air to pull into a room to make everyone look up. So, she said, putting her fork down slowly, there's actually something I need to tell you. Mom froze with her glass halfway to her lips. Dad set his knife down with a little metallic click. Logan's hand on my knee tensed. My pulse picked up, but not because I expected what was coming. No, I braced for something else. A job crisis, a dramatic breakup. Maybe a story about almost dying at a party. The usual Nicole chaos. Her eyes went glossy too quickly. If I hadn't known her, I might have thought she was trying not to cry. But I did know her. I knew that look. It was the one she'd perfected at 16 when she discovered that a well-timed tear could erase almost anything. It's kinda big, she added, looking down at her napkin. Mom's chair scraped the floor as she half stood, already reaching for her. Sweetheart, what is it? You're scaring me. Nicole shook her head, lashes fluttering. No, it's not bad. I mean, it's complicated, but it's good, I think. Dad frowned, brows knitting. Nicole, just say it. Nicole took a breath, then another. Her gaze flicked up once, very briefly, meeting mine. There was something there behind the fake vulnerability, a spark of satisfaction. A small, private smile that didn't reach her mouth but curled somewhere in her eyes. It was the look of someone about to drop a bomb and already enjoying the explosion. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words seemed to split the room in half. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's chair creaked as he jerked back. I actually felt Logan's grip tighten hard enough on my knee to hurt. For a moment, everything sounded far away, like someone had stuffed cotton in my ears. The ticking clock, a car passing outside, the soft fizz of a candle wick. I. What? Mom breathed. Nicole? Nicole nodded, swallowing dramatically. I know. I didn't mean to tell you like this. When we were all here and Dad prayed for our futures, and I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. Mom was around the table in 2 steps, hands on Nicole's shoulders, then smoothing down her hair. Then, of course, resting over her still perfectly flat stomach. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, my baby is having a baby." My father stood slower, but he stood too. He put a hand on Nicole's back, his face a mix of shock and something perilously close to awe. "A grandchild," he said quietly, like he'd just been handed a holy relic. My fork lay abandoned on my plate. The chicken had gone cold. I watched them wrap around her, years of fear and worship and gratitude tangling into this moment. For them, it wasn't just a pregnancy. It was a second miracle. The child they'd almost lost as a little girl now carrying life inside her. A full-circle redemption arc, straight out of a sermon. For me, it felt like standing outside in the snow, watching the warm light of a house you're not invited into. I realized I was holding my breath. Logan hadn't moved. His hand had fallen off my knee. His back was rigid, eyes locked on Nicole like he was trying to understand the words and failing. When did this happen?" Dad asked. "How far along are you?" Nicole sniffled delicately, playing with the edge of her napkin. "About 8 weeks," she said. "I wanted to be sure before I told you." "Have you seen a doctor? Are you taking your vitamins?" Mom rattled off immediately, switching into panic care mode so seamlessly it almost made me dizzy. "You have to be careful, honey. You know your history." "I know, Mom," Nicole said softly. "I'm being careful. I promise." There was a pause. A big one. Then my mother asked the question hanging in the air like smoke. Her voice dropped, reverent and afraid at the same time. "Sweetheart, who's the father?" Nicole's shoulders stiffened. For the first time that night, the performance faltered. Her eyes shifted again, just a little too quickly. I followed that glance. It went from our mother's face to our father's. And then, painfully, unmistakably, to the man sitting beside me. To my husband. The room tilted. Time slowed into this horrible, syrupy drag where every detail became sharp. The way her fingers twisted the napkin. The way Mom's hand tightened on her shoulder. The way Logan's jaw clenched as if he already knew he was about to be accused of something insane and unforgivable. "Nicole?" Dad said. His voice had gone very quiet, the way it did when he was about to discipline someone. "Who is the father?" Her eyes slid to Logan again and stayed there this time. She let her lower lip tremble. She inhaled slowly like she was about to confess to a crime she didn't want to admit but felt morally compelled to share. "It's," she whispered, then stopped, blinking away a tear. "Nicole," Mom urged, "whatever it is, we'll get through it. But we need to know." She closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them again, they were shiny and wet and full of this manufactured guilt that would have fooled almost anyone who hadn't watched her turn it on and off her entire life. "It's Logan," she said. I'm pregnant with Logan's baby." Everything exploded at once. "What the hell did you just say?" Logan shot to his feet so fast his chair slammed into the wall. "Language!" Mom shouted automatically, then immediately burst into fresh sobs. No, that can't. You two, how could you? Are you out of your mind?" Logan was shaking, face flushed. He looked at Nicole like she'd grown another head, then at my parents, then at me. Melanie, you know this is insane. You know I would never. Logan, sit down. Dad barked, his face darkening. We will get to you. Right now, I want to hear what Nicole has to say. You want to hear her? Logan's mouth twisted in disbelief. She just lied to your face and. Are you calling me a liar? Nicole's voice wobbled, small and wounded. Yes, Logan shouted. Yes, I am, because this is. Enough, my father thundered. There will be order in my house. Mom was sobbing outright now, clutching the cross at her throat with one hand and Nicole's arm with the other, as if the jewelry and her favorite child combined could hold back reality. My pulse was racing so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Logan's words, my parents' reactions, Nicole's faux innocent face, they blurred into a rush of noise. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my glass, though for one brief, sharp second I imagined it. Red wine splashing across Nicole's carefully chosen sweater like blood, the satisfying smash of crystal. Instead, I just stared at her. At the way she angled her body, slightly turned toward my parents, away from me. At the way she seemed to fold inward, making herself small in exactly the way that made other people want to make her feel big. At the way her eyes darted to me in a way, faster now, like she was afraid of what she'd see there. I saw fear, yes. But under it, I saw something else. Calculation. She had chosen those words exactly. She hadn't said, I think it might be Logan's. She had said, I'm pregnant with Logan's baby, like it was a fact carved into stone. My husband argued, parents cried, voices overlapped, the candle flickered. My heart hammered against my ribs, trying to break out of my chest. And underneath all of that, like a thread of cold steel running through panic, a single thought took shape. No. No, I told myself, firmly, silently. We are not doing this the way we did every other time. We are not letting her start a fire and then watching it burn our lives down while everyone rushes to cover her from the smoke. I didn't know yet how she planned to back this up. I didn't know which poor idiot she'd actually gotten pregnant by, or if she was pregnant at all. I didn't know how far she was willing to take the lie. But I knew this. It was a lie. And for the first time in my life, the knowledge didn't just hurt. It sharpened. Logan turned to me again, eyes wide, desperate. Melanie, please, say something. You know this is impossible. I looked at him. At the man who had held my hand through bad news in cold exam rooms, who had carried boxes into 2 apartments, who had made midnight pancakes when anxiety wouldn't let me sleep. I know, I said quietly. His shoulders dropped half an inch in sheer relief. Nicole flinched. My parents were still caught in their own storm, betrayal battling denial on their faces. But in that moment, none of them mattered as much as the decision settling slow and heavy in my chest. I set my fork down with care. The sound of metal on porcelain was small, but it cut through the shouting like a bell. Everyone looked at me. I folded my napkin, fingers steady now. My heart was still racing, but something else had slid into place over it. Something colder, cleaner. I don't know why you're doing this, I said to Nicole, my voice low, almost calm. Not yet, but I will find out. Melanie, Mom started. I didn't tear my gaze away from my sister. You picked the wrong story to tell, I said. And you picked the wrong person to drag into it. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange clarity settle over me. If Nicole wanted to start a war, fine. For 32 years, I'd been the one who swallowed everything to keep the peace. Not anymore. She had opened this game with a lie. I wasn't going to scream or run or beg my parents to believe me. I was going to do something much worse. I was going to make sure everyone saw the truth, and I was going to make sure my sister couldn't hide from it this time. If Nicole wanted to play with my life, I thought, watching her face pale just a little under all that pretty, then I'd make damn sure I was the one who decided how this story ended. I don't remember the exact day my sister almost died, but I remember the silence that followed. I was 8 years old, sitting on the cold hospital floor with a coloring book on my knees, when I first learned that silence could be heavy. It wasn't the quiet of bedtime or church, it was a vacuum. A kind of nothing that swallowed every sound and left you afraid to breathe too loudly in case it broke whatever thin thread was keeping your world together. Nicole was 5, and her heart had decided to stop behaving. Viral myocarditis, the doctor said. I didn't know the word, but I learned fast that it meant close enough to God's attention to scare everyone. She lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines that beeped in rhythms I couldn't understand, and my mother sat there for hours, whispering prayers into the sterile air. My father paced the hallway with his Bible open, like if he kept turning pages fast enough, he might find the verse that would fix her. No one told me much. No one needed to. The look on their faces said everything. I remember asking, "Is she going to die?" My father said, "Not if we pray hard enough." My mother said, "God won't take her from us. He can't." No one told me what to do if he didn't want her, but forgot to give us back our life anyway. After she recovered, after the miracle, my parents changed. Or maybe they became who they were always waiting to be, true believers in divine favoritism. They didn't call it that, of course. They called it gratitude. They called it faith. They called it cherishing the gift we almost lost. But to me, it always looked like worship. Every breath Nicole took was treated like a hymn. Every scraped knee, every tantrum, every whim became holy. She didn't just survive, she was chosen. And when your little sister is chosen by God, what does that make you? I'll tell you, the backup plan, the spare part, the one God didn't have to save. At first, I tried to understand. I was the big sister. I told myself I was supposed to help. I fetched tissues for Mom, snacks for Dad, and coloring books for Nicole. I told her stories when she was scared at night. When she cried because the heart monitor beeped too loudly, I would hum lullabies through the crack of her door. And when she got better, when the doctors finally smiled and said, "She's going to be fine," I thought we'd go back to normal. We never did. The day she came home from the hospital, the whole church threw a party. They called it a Thanksgiving service, but it felt more like a coronation. My mother cried through the hymns. My father gave a speech about faith and miracles and the power of prayer. Nicole sat in the middle of the living room, wearing a new pink dress, clutching a stuffed lamb someone had brought her. People called her our little miracle, God's proof, the angel he sent back. No one said a word to me. When I tried to show them a picture I'd drawn, here's the two of us, hand in hand, standing under a rainbow, Mom smiled distractedly and said, "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Go show your sister." Even my art had to be redirected toward her. That night, I found Nicole asleep in her new princess bed. I stood there for a while, watching her chest rise and fall. She looked so small, so perfect. I felt guilty for being jealous of someone who had almost died. I touched the lamb toy and whispered, "You're lucky, you know that?" She didn't answer, of course. She just rolled over, and I went back to my room, the one that had been turned into a guest room for church members who came to pray over the house while she was sick. My toys were still in boxes. I learned early that love could be a currency, and Nicole had an unlimited balance. When she started school, the miracle grew legs. Every teacher, every neighbor, every parent at church knew about her story. She didn't have to be good. She only had to be fragile. Every time she forgot her homework or talked back, Mom explained it away. She gets tired easily. Her heart isn't like other children's. Funny thing, though, it never stopped her from running, or climbing, or throwing tantrums that could level a room. I once got grounded for a week for spilling grape juice on the couch. Nicole once threw an entire bowl of spaghetti against the wall because she didn't like the texture. Mom cleaned it up while Dad told her to rest. "She's sensitive," he said. "Don't provoke her." By 12, I could cook dinner, fold laundry, clean the house, and make straight A's. By 12, Nicole could cry on command. It became our family's rhythm. She performed, they applauded. I worked, they expected it. Sometimes I tried to point it out gently, in the clumsy way kids do. "Why do I always have to help?" I'd ask. "Because you're older," Mom would say. "Because you're responsible," Dad would add. I learned that responsible was adult code for invisible. The older we got, the clearer the pattern became. At 16, when Nicole failed math, mom blamed the teacher for not understanding creative minds. At 16, when I got a B plus, dad asked if I was losing focus. At 17, Nicole wrecked dad's car sneaking out to a party. At 17, I got grounded because I hadn't told them she was gone. They didn't even apologize when the police brought her home. I still remember the way mom cried. Not because Nicole could have been hurt, but because, oh, she's been through so much already. As if surviving once meant a lifetime exemption from consequences, and I believed it for a long time. I truly did. I told myself it was fine, that God had given me broad shoulders for a reason, that every family has a favorite, that it wasn't her fault she'd been sick, that I was stronger, smarter, more disciplined, the adult, even when I was still a child. But somewhere around college, something shifted. When I left for university, mom cried like I was going to war. "You'll call every day?" she asked. "I'll try," I said. "But it's a lot of work. I just don't want you to forget your sister." Forget her. As if that were even possible. At the same time, Nicole got her first modeling gig. Nothing big. Local boutiques mostly. But you'd think she'd signed with Vogue the way they celebrated. "God is blessing her path," mom said. "See what faith can do?" I bit my tongue instead of saying, faith didn't get her the job. Her Instagram did. College was supposed to be my fresh start. A world where no one knew me as Nicole's sister. But every phone call from home dragged me back. Mom's voice always full of new updates. Nicole's trip, Nicole's creative pursuits, Nicole's health checkups, just in case. "How are your classes, Mel?" she'd ask eventually, as if remembering she had 2 daughters. "Good," I'd say. "That's nice." "Oh, Nicole met someone. He works in marketing. Can you believe it?" I'd hang up and stare at my textbooks, the words blurring until they meant nothing. I worked 2 jobs to cover what my scholarship didn't. I slept 4 hours a night. And when I graduated with honors, my parents sent flowers. The same day they flew to LA because Nicole had an audition. They missed my ceremony. That was the day I realized love in our family was a zero-sum game, and Nicole had already won it. The thing about being the responsible one is that people stop checking if you're okay. They assume you'll figure it out, that you'll survive because you always do. They don't see the resentment because you've learned to package it as independence. By the time I was 25, I had built a life that didn't need their validation. I had a career, an apartment, my own rhythm. And yet, the smallest text from my mother, "Pray for Nicole, she's feeling unwell," could still twist my stomach into knots. When I met Logan, I didn't tell them right away. I wanted something that was mine. He was calm where I was restless, funny in quiet ways, steady in a way that felt like gravity. He didn't know the mythology of my family didn't treat me like the second act after a miracle. He saw me. The first time I took him home for dinner, Nicole was 21, just back from a spiritual retreat that looked suspiciously like a beach vacation. She met him at the door in a sundress, eyes bright with curiosity. "You didn't tell me your boyfriend was hot," she'd said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Nicole," Mom scolded gently, laughing. "Behave." I remember Logan's polite, uncomfortable smile. I remember the way Nicole kept finding excuses to ask him questions about his job, his car, his travel plans. I remember Mom leaning over to whisper, "Don't be jealous, Melanie, she's just playful." Playful. That word followed her everywhere like perfume. As adults, Nicole and I stopped pretending we were close. We texted on holidays, saw each other at church, smiled for photos. The kind of sisterhood that looks fine in pictures but is hollow underneath. Every time I reached for peace, she reached for attention. Sometimes she'd call just to brag. About trips she couldn't afford, boyfriends she couldn't keep, and plans she'd never follow through on. And yet, every failure was met with open arms. "She's trying," Dad would say. "She just needs support." Support meant money, of course, from them and indirectly from me, because every dollar they spent on saving Nicole was a dollar they didn't have for anyone else. For me, for the life I was building on my own. Still, I kept forgiving. That was my role, the good one, the patient one, the strong one. Until that night, the chicken dinner, the announcement, the lie. Looking back, it's easy to see how we got there. How a family built on faith could become addicted to miracles. How a girl who once needed saving learned that being helpless was her superpower. How I became the shadow cast by her spotlight. The truth is, I don't blame my parents the way I used to. They really did love us both. They just didn't know how to love without fear. They almost lost a child once, and it broke them. Every time they looked at Nicole, they saw the ghost of that hospital bed. Every time they looked at me, they saw stability, something they could lean on while they worshiped their fragile idol. You can't compete with trauma. You can only learn to live around it. And so I did, for years. Until my sister decided that being the miracle child wasn't enough. She wanted to be the victim again. Sometimes I wonder if she planned it, even subconsciously. The pregnancy lie, the drama, the timing. Maybe she heard Dad praying one night for the continuation of the family line. Maybe she saw Mom's eyes light up when babies were mentioned. Maybe she just realized that miracles get old if you don't refresh them once in a while. But I also wonder about myself, about the version of me that sat in that hospital hallway all those years ago, coloring quietly while my parents prayed for someone else. That little girl learned a dangerous lesson, that silence keeps you safe. It took me 3 decades to unlearn it. When Nicole pointed her finger across the dinner table and said my husband's name like it was her confession and my sin, I didn't just see betrayal. I saw the end of the pattern. I saw a chance to stop being the shadow. And maybe that's the real miracle. And not that my sister survived, but that I finally decided to. Here's what you need to know about my sister, Nicole. She has never worked a day in her life. Not a real job. Not one that required a clock and code or a uniform, or the kind of humility that comes with taking orders. Work for Nicole was something that happened to other people. The universe, after all, had already told her she was special. Why would she ever break a sweat proving it? Things just fell into her lap. Opportunities, money, forgiveness, men, all of it. And when life handed her everything she didn't earn, she developed the worst kind of laziness. The moral kind. The night she said she was pregnant with my husband's child, I think part of me knew immediately that it wasn't just about drama. Nicole doesn't start chaos unless she has something to gain. The only question was, what? We drove home in silence that night. No yelling, no tears. Just the hum of the engine and the sound of my pulse in my ears. Logan's hands were gripping the steering wheel hard enough that his knuckles looked white in the streetlight. The air between us was thick. I could smell the faint trace of his aftershave, the same one he'd worn since our wedding. Warm, cedar, steady. But even that familiar comfort couldn't drown the memory of my sister's voice saying his name like a confession. "She's lying," he said finally. His voice cracked on the word. "Melanie, you know that, right? You know she's lying." I turned my head to look at him. He didn't take his eyes off the road. The muscles in his jaw were moving like he was chewing back something sharp. "I know," I said. He exhaled hard. God, I thought for a second. "I know, Logan." My voice was flat but steady. "I believe you." He looked at me then, briefly. There was something in his eyes. Confusion, gratitude, maybe even guilt that I wasn't screaming or throwing things. But I wasn't going to give Nicole the satisfaction of that. "She's been doing this her whole life," I said quietly. "Making up stories, pulling people into them. This one just got bigger." He gripped the wheel tighter. "It's not just bigger, Mel. It's insane. My name, your sister." He stopped, shaking his head. "I swear to God, I haven't even been alone with her." "I know," I said again, softer this time. We drove past the old church where my parents had baptized Nicole twice. Once after her illness, a second time when she rededicated her life to God after dropping out of college. I used to think the bells there sounded like peace. That night, they sounded like judgment. When we pulled into the driveway, Logan turned off the engine but didn't move. The porch light flicked on automatically, casting a pale yellow glow over the dashboard. He finally spoke. "Why are you so calm?" I looked out the window. "Because it's not the first time she's tried to take something that's mine." He winced. "Melanie, I'm not angry at you," I said. "I'm just done pretending to be surprised." We sat there for a moment. The air felt heavy, like a pause before a storm. He leaned back in his seat. "She's crazy, Mel. But this is a new level. What the hell does she get out of this?" That was the first time the question fully formed in my head. What's the gain? Because Nicole doesn't do pain unless there's a prize. Inside, the house felt too clean, too organized, like the world was mocking the mess that had just detonated in our lives. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my purse, and walked straight to the kitchen. The need for motion kept me upright. Logan followed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I should call your parents tomorrow, try to explain." I poured 2 glasses of water and handed him one. "Don't," I said. "Not yet." He frowned. "Mel, they wouldn't believe you," I said. "Not right now. Not after that performance." He hesitated, then nodded, grim. "You're right." We stood there for a while, leaning against opposite counters like 2 soldiers after a battle. The refrigerator hummed softly. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, oblivious to the war that had just been declared inside my family. Then I said it. The thing that pulled everything back into sharp focus. "She can't be pregnant with your baby." Logan blinked. "Obviously." "No," I said. "I mean, physically can't." It took him a second, and then I saw the realization hit. His eyes widened slightly. "You mean because of—" I nodded. "Because of that." He set his glass down slowly. "Do you think we should tell them?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I want to know why she did it first." He stared at me for a long moment. "Melanie, I hate that you even have to think this way." "Yeah," I said, almost laughing. "Me too." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch long after Logan went to bed. Laptop open, the glow of the screen painting the room in pale blue light. Old instincts kicked in. Research mode. Logic over chaos. It's what years of cleaning up. After my family's messes had trained me for, Nicole was reckless, but she wasn't stupid. Her lies always had structure. This one would too. I started with the obvious, money. Nicole had never cared about morality, but she cared about comfort. She'd been living in a downtown apartment that cost more than most people's mortgages, and her Instagram was still full of brand collaborations that I suspected were just code for sugar daddy sponsorships. She didn't have a job, not in any real sense, which meant she was running out of resources and fast. So, what had changed recently? Scrolling through my messages with Mom, I found it, a few weeks back, hidden in one of her overly cheerful texts. "We're so excited, honey. Your father and I finally decided to set up something for the future. A fund for when we have grandchildren. It just feels like the right time. God is preparing our hearts for that new season." My stomach turned. A fund? Of course. Nicole must have found out. Maybe she overheard them. Maybe Mom told her in that soft, confiding tone she used when talking to her fragile child. It didn't matter how. The result was the same. Nicole saw a pile of money with her name written all over it. And if the fund was meant for grandchildren, she just had to create one. Or at least pretend to. But why drag Logan into it? Why me? Why now? That was the missing piece. The cruelty was too specific to be random. By morning, my logic had sharpened into something close to obsession. I texted my friend Erin, who worked in real estate and happened to be good at finding things people didn't want found. "Hey, you remember my sister? The blonde disaster with a halo?" I need to know if she's been talking to anyone shady lately. Or posting about money, Aaron replied 10 minutes later. Define shady. Shady enough to fake a pregnancy. There was a pause. Then, let me check. I went to work that day pretending to be normal, answered emails, sat in meetings, nodded when people talked about deadlines. But my mind kept looping back to Nicole's voice, the way she said, "I'm pregnant," like she was announcing a victory. That afternoon, Aaron called. "So, funny thing," she said. "Your sister's been seen a lot lately with a guy named Brandon, goes by Bran online. Used to DJ, got arrested last year for possession, did a stint in rehab. Word is he's trying to get clean again." "Brandon," I repeated, already pulling up his Instagram. A blur of tattoos, gym selfies, inspirational quotes, and half-naked girls. Classic. "Yeah," Aaron said. "Apparently he's been bragging about some big plan with a rich family. Something about money for a kid." A chill crawled up my spine. A kid? That's what he said. "Do you know where he lives?" "Downtown. Corner of 8th and Willow." "Don't tell me you're going there." "I won't," I lied. By the time I got home that evening, Logan was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, chopping vegetables like he could dice the stress out of existence. "You didn't sleep, did you?" he asked without looking up. "No." "You look like hell." "Thanks," I said dryly. "That's the look I was going for." He stopped, knife hovering midair. "You're scaring me, Mel." I met his eyes. "She's working with someone?" He frowned. "What?" "Some guy. Brandon. Former DJ. Current screw-up. They're planning something together. He's supposed to be the actual father." Logan stared at me, jaw tight. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "Why involve me at all, then?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I said, sitting down. "If this was just about money, she could have faked a name, made up some boyfriend. But no, she picked you." His brow furrowed. "Because she hates you?" "No," I said. "Because she's jealous." He blinked, processing. "Jealous? Of what?" "Of this." I gestured around the room. "A husband. Stability. Attention that isn't pity. You're the only thing I ever had that she couldn't take. Until now." Logan exhaled, rubbing his temples. "This is insane." "Welcome to my family," I said softly. Over the next few days, I pieced the story together like a detective in my own life. Brandon, or Bran, as Nicole called him, had met her at some party 2 months ago. He was 30, good-looking in that washed-out post-rehab way, and desperate for money. Nicole must have told him about the fund, dangled promises of taking care of him, and convinced him to be part of her scam. Maybe they planned to fake the pregnancy long enough to cash in. Maybe she actually wanted to get pregnant for real, just not with him yet. Through Aaron's contacts, I learned one more thing. Brandon was still on medication to wean off opioids, the kind that messes with fertility. In other words, not exactly baby-making material, which meant Nicole's timeline was falling apart fast. I stared at my notes, the timeline, the screenshots. She'd backed herself into a corner, and I finally understood the genius in her madness. She didn't just pick Logan because she was jealous. She picked him because he was the perfect scapegoat. Clean, respectable, married to me. The man whose word my parents would believe least if I defended him. The lie worked precisely because it hurt me most. That was always her secret weapon, pain as persuasion. But this time, she'd underestimated the one thing she couldn't manipulate: science. Logan's vasectomy was our quiet truth, something deeply personal and private. We decided together after the genetic test results came back, a mutation that could lead to a degenerative condition, nothing fatal, but enough to make us reconsider. It was one of the hardest conversations we ever had. There were tears, silence, long nights lying back to back, wondering what we were giving up. In the end, we chose certainty over risk, love over biology. And now that decision, that quiet act of responsibility, was the weapon that would undo her. That night, I sat at my desk, looking at a photo of Nicole on my phone. Her perfect smile. Her perfectly filtered life. You almost had me, I thought. Almost. I opened a new file on my computer and started typing notes, names, dates, connections, everything I'd need to make sure that when I went after her, I wouldn't miss. I didn't know yet exactly how I'd expose her, not whether I'd use the medical proof or Brandon or the fund, but I knew one thing for certain. When it happened, she wouldn't see it coming. Outside, the streetlight flickered. In the reflection of the window, my face looked calm, focused, cold maybe. I'd spent my whole life cleaning up her messes. Now I was going to let her drown in one of her own. And as I closed the laptop, a strange sense of peace settled over me. And not joy, not victory, just quiet clarity. For the first time, I wasn't playing defense. I was preparing for the kill. I don't know who suggested another family dinner. Maybe Mom wanted to believe that food could still heal what words had destroyed. Maybe Dad thought prayer could glue the pieces back together. Or maybe they both just couldn't stand the silence that had settled between us since that night. Either way, a week later, I found myself standing in the same dining room, staring at the same table where my sister had detonated my life. Same candles, same Bible verses, same chairs, different woman sitting in mine. Logan stood beside me, pouring tea into delicate cups. His movements were slow, deliberate, the way you move when you're walking through a minefield you've already mapped out. He didn't look angry anymore, just tired. I knew the feeling. Nicole was late, as always. When she finally arrived, she looked radiant. That fake, polished kind of radiance that photographs well and bleeds under real light. She was wearing soft pink again, her favorite innocent color, and a hand placed carefully on her still flat stomach. She smiled too brightly. "Hi, everyone." My mother nearly wept at the sight of her. "Oh, sweetheart, you look glowing. Sit, sit. You shouldn't be standing too long." Nicole obeyed with a delicate sigh, like she was carrying the weight of the world instead of the weight of her lies. Dad pulled out her chair. The whole choreography was perfect. Everyone falling back into their old roles. Everyone except me. I didn't sit until Logan did. He looked at me once, a quiet nod that said, "You're in charge now." Dinner began the way all our family dinners did, with a prayer that was half gratitude, half damage control. Dad's voice trembled slightly when he said, "Lord, help us walk in truth and grace." I almost smiled. Truth was about to make an appearance. We ate in silence for a while. My mother fussed over Nicole's plate. "You have to eat more protein, honey. It's good for the baby." Nicole nodded sweetly. "I know, Mom. I'm trying." She looked up and met my eyes across the table. For a split second, there was that familiar flicker of challenge, ain't the same one from when we were children, when she'd steal something of mine and wait for me to react. This time, I didn't blink. "So," Dad said, trying for normal. "We've all been through a lot, but we're a family. And family forgives." Nicole's lips curved in a small, triumphant smile. "That's what I've been praying for." Mom reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "The important thing is that the baby is healthy. That's all that matters now." Her words hung in the air like a loaded gun. I set down my fork quietly. "Actually," I said, my voice even, almost gentle, "that's what I wanted to talk about tonight." Nicole's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" I folded my hands. "Health of the baby and of the father." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Melanie, don't relax," I said softly. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to help." That made my parents look up. Mom's brows knit. "Help? With what?" I kept my tone light, conversational. "With making sure everything's okay medically." "See, there's something you all don't know about Logan." Logan didn't move, didn't speak. He simply stared at his cup, hands folded, playing his part perfectly. The quiet center in the storm. Nicole shifted in her seat. "What are you talking about?" I looked at her, then at my parents. A few years ago, Logan was diagnosed with a rare genetic mutation. Nothing immediately dangerous, but serious enough that our doctors recommended we not try to have biological children. My mother's hand froze halfway to her mouth. My father blinked. A mutation? I nodded. A hereditary condition that can cause severe deformities, neurological issues, developmental failure. There's a 50% chance of transmission, and in most cases, the fetus doesn't survive. The room went cold. Nicole's hand slipped from her stomach. That's why we decided, I continued quietly, that if we ever wanted a family, we'd adopt. Nicole swallowed hard. That's horrible, she stammered. Yes, I agreed softly. It is. I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving hers. That's why I was worried when you said you were pregnant. You didn't tell us who the father was, but since you hinted it might be Logan, I let the pause hang. I thought you deserved to know what that would mean. Her face drained of color. You're lying. No, I said simply. I'm not. And because I care about you and about the baby, I went ahead and scheduled you an appointment with a genetic specialist. Tomorrow morning, you just have to go in for a few tests. Her eyes darted to our parents. Mom was pale, whispering, Tests? Yes, I said smoothly. To make sure the child isn't affected. It's standard procedure. That's absurd, Nicole snapped, her sweetness cracking. I don't need tests. Mom turned to her, panicked. Honey, if there's even a chance. There isn't, Nicole shouted, slamming her hand on the table. This is insane. You're all taking her side again. I didn't move. Nicole, I said quietly, if you're telling the truth, the tests will only prove it. Her breath hitched. For a second, I thought she might actually faint. Then she exploded. You want me to have a baby with some kind of mutation? She screamed. You expect me to carry that monster? You're sick. Nicole, my father barked, horrified. Watch your mouth. She turned on him, her mask gone. You're all insane. You expect me to go along with this? To pretend that man is... She pointed at Logan, shaking. That man has bad genes. He's diseased. What kind of woman stays with someone like that? The room went silent. And that was my cue. I stood slowly. The kind of woman who knows exactly what she married. Nicole's breathing was ragged, uneven. What? I looked at her, really looked at her. You wanted a show, Nicole? Fine. Here it is. I walked to the counter, opened my bag, and took out a folder. Thick, heavy, full of the quiet power of paper. Lab results, signatures, stamps. I laid it gently in front of her. This, I said, is Logan's medical record. The diagnosis, the consultations, the procedure we decided on together. Her eyes flicked over the words, uncomprehending at first. Then they widened. Procedure, she whispered. Yes, I said. Vasectomy, 2 years ago. Confirmed, successful, and permanent. My mother gasped. My father made a sound like a prayer that got stuck halfway out. Nicole stared at the papers as if they were on fire. That means, I said quietly, you can't be pregnant by him. You never could. She shook her head violently. You forged this. Would you like to call the clinic? I asked calmly. I can give you the number. Her lips trembled. You're lying. I leaned forward just slightly. Am I? She looked at Logan then, desperate for denial, but he only stared back. Silent, steady, unreadable. It broke something in her. You could see it. The performance cracked, the lines forgotten. Why would you do this? Mom whispered, tears welling. Nicole, why? Nicole's mouth opened, then closed again. The silence stretched, heavy and choking. I decided to end it. Because she found out about your grandchild fund, I said. The one you started last month. the one meant for whoever had the first baby. She thought she could fake a pregnancy, claim the money, and then, "That's not true," Nicole screamed. "You don't have proof." I smiled faintly. "Actually, I do." I opened the folder again and spread out the rest. Screenshots, messages, photos, her texts with Brandon, the bank transfers, the fake doctor's notes, the time-stamped photos she'd planned to post later. Every lie, neatly printed and arranged in front of her like exhibits in a courtroom. My father went white. "Dear God!" Mom covered her mouth, shaking. "Nicole?" Nicole pushed back from the table, chair screeching. "You went through my phone? You spied on me?" "I protected myself," I said. "And him." Logan still hadn't spoken. He didn't need to. His silence was the loudest thing in the room. "You would have let me look like a whore," Nicole hissed, voice trembling. "You would have destroyed me." "You destroyed yourself," I said softly. "I just turned on the lights." For a moment, no one moved. Then Nicole burst into tears. Real ones this time, not the rehearsed kind. The sobs came in sharp gasps, hands clutching her face. Mom reached for her, but she jerked away. "I just wanted," she stammered between breaths. "I just wanted them to love me again." My father's voice broke. "We never stopped loving you, Nicole, but this isn't love." The room felt smaller suddenly, suffocating. Years of denial, devotion, and fear collapsed in a single breath. Mom began crying too, whispering prayers into her trembling hands. Dad looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in my entire life, one that mixed guilt, sorrow, and something that almost looked like respect. He turned to Nicole, his voice steady but final. "You need help. Real help. I'll make some calls in the morning." Nicole froze. "Help? You're sending me away?" "You need rest," Mom said weakly. "And therapy. Maybe the center in Vermont." "Rehab?" Nicole's voice cracked into a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all. "You're sending me to rehab?" Her eyes darted around the table, searching for an ally, but no one met her gaze. "Not even God, I think." She let out a strangled sound, then grabbed her purse and stormed out. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the cross on the wall. The silence that followed was the truest sound I'd ever heard in that house. Mom cried for a long time. Dad sat with his head in his hands. Logan and I stayed. Not to gloat, just to be there. The truth had finally done what 30 years of patience couldn't. By the end of the night, Mom had agreed to drive Nicole to a rehabilitation clinic the next morning. Dad promised to cover the expenses. And for the first time, they didn't say the word miracle. They said, sorry. When we left, the air outside felt cleaner. The night sky was clear, almost too bright. Logan reached for my hand as we walked to the car. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. A week later, we visited the children's home on the edge of town, the one we'd quietly supported for years. Rows of small shoes by the door, laughter spilling down the hallway. It was noisy, imperfect, full of life. A little boy ran up to Logan, holding out a toy car with a broken wheel. "Can you fix it?" he asked. Logan knelt down, smiling. "I can try." I stood there watching him, and for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't anger or exhaustion. It was peace. Not the kind you pray for, the kind you build yourself. When he stood, he looked at me, eyes soft. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." He reached for my hand again. "You sure you don't want to tell your parents about adopting?" "Not yet," I said. "They need time to believe in something real again." He smiled. "And you?" "I stopped needing them to believe in me a long time ago." Outside, the afternoon sun poured through the windows, catching on the dust motes like tiny floating miracles. Real ones this time, small, flawed, human. As we walked toward the door, I thought about my sister. About all the years I spent cleaning her messes, forgiving her, fearing her. About how she had built her life on miracles, and I had finally built mine on truth. Some people spend their lives waiting for salvation. I just had to save myself. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the shadow anymore. I felt like the light.